Good to see some repeat attendees. We'll get going in just a moment. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to those that joined us yesterday for our first session, and welcome to those joining us today about EC3 and the next version. Thanks so much for the many ways you're supporting building transparency and helping shape EC3. I'm Allison Kin-Bennett. I've been here about 5 months now in my role as Executive Director, and I'm joined today by Aziza Priota, our Data Manager, Vaslav Hasik, our Technical Director, and Michaela DeRusso, former BTer, now supporting us as an independent consultant. We are all listening hard over the course of these sessions to help translate your feedback into EC3 2.0's roadmap. In the first session, we talked broadly about EC3 evolving as infrastructure, and Vaslav will do a bit of a brief recap today on that, and that recording will be posted today or tomorrow. Today, we are zooming in on the heart of EC3's infrastructure, the EPD data ecosystem itself, sourcing, quality, and management of the data. Next slide, please. As EC3 supports procurement and policy and reporting workflows, expectations for data reliability, comparability, traceability have increased dramatically. So EC3 2.0 isn't just about storing more EPDs, it's about managing quality, provenance, and interoperability across a growing global ecosystem of program operators, manufacturers, and standards critical to BT's mission. Alongside this focus on EC3 2.0, stay tuned for more soon about a partnership to bring Tally 2.0 to market this year, reinforcing our mission for open, reliable information for built environment decision-making. And next slide, please. This only works because of this ecosystem. Thank you, supporters. And next slide, partners, in helping us move the industry toward greater transparency and action. So next slide. For today, we're looking for your practical feedback on things like where does data quality break down? Where does comparability become unclear? What data matters most and how do you want to find it or access it? Where best for BT to partner? What are your pain points? So wherever you sit in this ecosystem of EPDs, and no matter your technical jargon comfort level, and you can trust me on that, your input is directly shaping EC3 ingestion workflows, validation rules, data governance approaches, not only new features. So put your feedback and questions into the Q&A, and if the Q&A is causing trouble for you, it wasn't accessible for some participants yesterday, we opened the chat as well. We'll be monitoring both. You can also speak up at the end or throughout as Vaslav turns to the audience for Q&A, and take time to fill out additional input in the form linked in the Q&A and on our homepage as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vaslav.
Thank you, Allison, and again, great having everyone on the call. Not sure how many of you have been able to attend yesterday's session, but there will be a quick recap of what we've gone over yesterday. And then we're really going to dive deep into some of the EPD specific ideas and questions. Just to start us off, for anyone that wasn't at yesterday's sessions, we have collected feedback from multiple channels that we currently have. There's the report box and feedback. place on our inside the application. We've collected over 4,000 different tickets from people. Part of those include improvement suggestions. We also obviously have email support channels, and as Alison mentioned, we have the latest edition of the feedback form, which would be great, if you take a look at and fill out as well. And again, in any of these suggestions, the more specific ideas or kind of feedback of what's working and what isn't is always, more helpful to us as we try and design the tool and make some of these improvements. And then even calls and in-person events, obviously, even those that is a valid channel of communicating with us. We do take notes on everything that you provide as feedback on the platform. So with all of that feedback that we've collected, we now have 144 individual line items of things that we have heard people are requesting that we change, or that we even know internally that we need to change to make some of our operations a little bit more efficient, streamlined, and effective. Today's session is going to be focusing again on mainly the EPD sections of all of that feedback. And so that's really just one half of the application as a whole. So again, just a little bit of a level setting and context setting. Here's the look at the two main components of EC3 currently. One is just being able to collect an environmental product declaration data, putting it in a database and making it searchable, as well as in some cases comparable, or allow the users to compare. And then the other part is the plan and compare building section of EC3, where our architects, engineers, contractors, and building owners and real estate owners actually create their own projects, collect material quantities, and link either general product categories to individual line items or specific EPDs. Sometimes they can even select alternatives, alternates, etc. In terms of the reach of the tool, just again, a context setting, we do collect EPD data globally, and we currently have over 120,000 valid EPDs. You may see the number over 200,000 EPDs. That includes the expired EPDs because we don't remove data from the database for auditability purposes, since everything has to be, everything may be connected to end users' projects, and also our outside integrators, which we now have over 15 of those. They may also be referencing EPDs that we just need permanent record of. That does not necessarily mean that all the EPDs are searchable at all times. EC3 itself does have the validity date default filter applied so that, when people are searching today, they are only seeing the currently valid EPDs. Quick walkthrough through some of the functionalities, again, for context setting and sort of discussion purposes. So one part of EC3 is just the database of all the EPDs. So there's different tables of all those EPDs. We have different ways that the data actually gets entered in, including some direct depositing of digital records of EPDs from some of our partners. But we also have PDF digitization that still goes on. And any user of EC3, any architect, engineer, if they get a PDF in their hand, they are able to upload it into the platform. We also develop or structure the way that the data is searchable within the tool. So as you may know, most of you are probably heavy users of EC3, I expect, in today's call. As you know, we have many different categories, some of them publicly available, some of them privately. Each category has a different set of search filters and different ways that we try and align the data within those categories so that it can be comparable. There are some categories where it is much more difficult to create basically equivalent or put equivalent data in the same buckets. And so in some categories, we also do disable comparisons. So that some of those functionalities are currently available. You can also, as you know, look at the individual EPD data, which we'll have some questions and ideas about a little bit later. And you can also understand better the statistics of specifically global warming potential today across these different categories. But we'll also have some additional questions on the best ways of showing some of this data and potentially showing additional data in the future. And I think this is the last part for this whole find an EPD, compare an EPD, is there are certain comparison features within the tool currently that allow you to look at the ranges of impacts across manufacturers, across plants, and also for individual products. So with that, we'll shift to actually focusing on EC3 2.0 ideas and feedback that we've gotten so far. And we'll actually dive in deep into some of these topics that we have specifically around EPD sourcing, analysis, etc. I think one more recap slide, and that is some of the high-level overview of improvements that we went over yesterday in our session. So overall, we're looking at changes to the user experience and interface, simplifying the platform in certain places. You know, we have gotten feedback that it's still too cumbersome for some novices to the field, and sometimes people see 10 or 20 different search filters and they kind of get scared and run away immediately. Or it's not very clear which search filters are necessarily more important than the other ones. Or there's also hidden functionalities within the search filters that are not always obvious. We are also, from the get-go of EC3 2.0, considering accessibility of the tool and certain accessibility compliance, design features that are part of the Section 508 design patterns that are usually required for any government-used web applications. And I also know that currently there are some performance issues in certain places of EC3, and so we have recently kicked off a profiling exercise where we're identifying the sources of some of those loading times. That is another high importance issue that we're trying to address with EC3 2.0 is improve the performance overall. Additional user interface improvements. There's a lot of tables within the tool. Some of them are a little bit less customizable and it can be a little bit hard to use for large analyses of EPD data. So there's also some improvements on the list for that, for those aspects. And then we do have multi-language support today, but that was another thing that just keeps being reiterated, that because we are a globally used tool, multi-language support within the tool just remains one of the top priorities. And as you may have guessed, with a lot of the changes in the AI space and a lot of the AI proliferation into tools, we have also had some questions about how AI is going to be implemented. And so we have a couple of ideas for AI-assisted features, but if you have any other wishes on that front, let us know, and we can plan that in as well. In terms of EPD data and search improvements, this is really an overview again what we touched on yesterday. We do plan on shifting away from the uncertainty-adjusted global warming potentials more towards reported global warming potentials, but that will also come with a need for additional education and transparency on some of the data quality aspects, or just differences in EPDs in general, right? So, for example, how else do we show specificity? Do we highlight which PCR-specific EPDs are actually compliant with? Are they developed to specific regions? Those kinds of things. We'll dive into that in depth in just a second. Additional improvements that we touched on yesterday were some restructuring and rethinking about how we actually store the environmental impacts tables, including some of the biogenic carbon data in those tables. And then lastly, one thing that I already kind of touched on already is just rethinking some of the improvements to the search interface on the individual product category search pages rethinking how we prioritize certain fields, and some of the statistics and summaries that we show if there are any improvements on those fronts as well. So with that, that's kind of the overview of what we've gone over the I was going to say past few days, but really yesterday, and as well what we are getting ready for with some of the EC3 2.0 design and ideas that we're putting together, and some of the specification of how certain functionalities work in the future. So we'll deep dive into more specific items on the EPD list, and we really want your input here. We want you to engage via the Q&A, the chat, or just simply raise your hand and chime in if you have anything to add. And as I mentioned before, there's the Google form as well, so don't forget about that feedback channel as well. I want to say that even though we have this full list of things that are on our list, we won't be able to address all of them at once. So really, this is a way for us to also find out what are the highest priorities for the different stakeholders that are at the table and using the tool. And then also, again, if you have specific design ideas, we welcome those as well. It does help us with understanding what people would like to see or what they expect from the tool. So with that, here's the full list that I have outlined for today for the different features. I will be going through these in groups, and so I'll just highlight a couple of these at once. I'll provide a couple of visual aids, explain what we are currently thinking behind some of these improvements, and then open up the floor for additional discussion on some of these line items. So the first one is talking about EPD sourcing, so really how we get data into the tool. And there are some established ways, as I mentioned, but we do want to consider program operators' use of the tool, if there is any currently. If there are any pain points with program operators, trying to enter data or edit data, and if they have any wishes for addressing specific workflows. I do want to say that I'm not sure that we will be able to address all program operator workflows. There are obviously program operators that are working on their own platforms, and there are also other players in this space that are specifically focused on helping LCA developers and program operators to address some of the efficiency and digitization processes. So we also are more open to collaboration with some of these other players. We do want to hear back what the current experiences and needs are, and if you are working with others that we should probably connect with, if we're not connected yet. We also have a question about our AI-powered digitization process. So right now, we are probably in something like 4th or 5th generation of digitization system. And it's getting better with, just the better capabilities of the AI models that are out there. But currently, our process still involves heavy, manual verification of all the data that comes in. And so usually if a user, like an architect or an engineer, uploads a PDF, or even a manufacturer uploads a PDF, it doesn't show up in the platform in a searchable way right away. It typically takes some time for us to go through the digitization and manual verification. So one question is that okay, or are people really looking at digitization on demand, where even if EPD shows up right away, even if it's not manually verified, maybe there's some additional process or ways that we show when EPDs are manually verified or not. And then lastly, API improvements. So again, as I mentioned, there are some platforms and program operators that are currently pushing data directly into EC3. We know at times there can be pain points with the API, and so any specifics that people have in terms of feedback on how all of that works, feel free to share those as well. Last thing, which is kind of out of the way here, it's not part of the sourcing, but really just general management of all of this data. I do want to hear feedback about the experience of everyone when they find issues in the platform and what the resolution process is like. We obviously try our best and fastest way to address all of your feedback. If you use that report bugs and feedback button, that is the fastest way of making sure that we address these issues. But again, just want to hear some feedback and ideas if there are opportunities for improvements. So with that, I'll open up the floor for everyone to chime in. If there's anyone that has feedback or ideas on these topics.
And you do have more topics to get into today. This isn't where we're stopping, so.
Just pause here for a second. Yeah.
Not seeing any Q&A or chat or raised hands right now, Vaslav.
Okay.
Oh, there's some hands. Wiley, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. Love the EC3 platform. So a few months ago, this has actually been more than a few, but I tried to upload manually an EPD to the system that existed for a product but wasn't currently locatable from the database. And I never got it to get through the passing phase of being approved. And I was just curious if there is some type of review process that it undergoes when you submit your own EPD to the platform, and how you'll know like if it's actually been reviewed and approved by the EC3 system, so that you can then track it with the products that you're identifying for your project, or if this is something that users can't actually do, like we can't actually upload our own EPDs that we find. That's my question.
Yeah, if I hear it right, so I think you uploaded an EPD and it said that it already exists, but it was still having issues that weren't resolved, so you weren't able to use it on a project, for example. Is that right?
Not necessarily that it didn't exist, but it just wouldn't let me. After I submitted it, it basically went back to the blank screen and gave me no updates on, was this actually submitted to the system? Is it going to be, am I going to be able to find this once I search for it? Wasn't able to find it. I don't know if that was a bug that was from, last year that was maybe resolved and you can actually upload. I haven't tried to upload an individual EPD since then. But yeah, basically I just went in, I had a PDF from a different manufacturer, added it to the EC3 platform, and it kind of just went blank at that point, and I wasn't able to find that EPD for the product in the software.
Got it. Yeah, there should be a page in the Add EPDs to EC3 section. If we didn't have this EPD before, there's the My Imports section, which should have shown your uploads. And gonna show it, but yeah, there's the my import section. If it just ended up being in a blank screen, that was probably an issue. We'll look into that. Otherwise, what can sometimes happen, like what I mentioned, is that if the EPD already exists, the EPD that you uploaded, it won't actually show up on your own list of uploaded EPDs. And that's one thing that we can improve is basically track. If you try to re-upload an EPD, even the one that already exists, that we could include it on the My Import section as well. But that's good feedback. Thank you. And if you are still not able to find the EPD today, connect with us. Aziza, our data manager, will be more than happy to help.
Got it. Thank you.
Vicky, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm curious just generally, like for the feedback and like bug reports and things like that, what the most common issues you see are. And tangentially related to that, I'm also interested, and I think this was a comment like that happened yesterday. If you're getting a lot of feedback requests that are like for EPD data that is incorrect, or like for something that is maybe actually an issue on the program operator side, like corrections needed to EPDs and things like that. So I guess that's two separate questions, but yeah, curious about that.
Yeah, I think most of the EPD issue tickets that we get are usually just, EPDs that weren't necessarily digitized a while ago. So we digitize everything that comes in today, but we do have we have a significant list of EPDs that, let's say, were uploaded 2 years ago, that may not have been digitized that we haven't quite gotten back all the way to. But it's more waiting for the digitization process than any other actual issues like with the EPDs themselves. We do here and there have people report, issues on the PDF documents themselves that they find and point out. Sometimes it's also that people find duplicates, in our system that actually just point to, let's say, rebranding of EPDs. And then we do try and connect with program operators in those cases to try and answer questions about those issues or even get those fixed or addressed. It's not the most efficient and streamlined system because we do handle all of this manually. And we have had some ideas about introducing some additional systems and processes in place that are a little bit more automated that let the program operators know about these issues. But yes, we do get a little bit of both. And we do try and connect with the program operators. I don't know if there's anyone else that should be involved in that channel of communication as well, but let us know.
We have Anthony and then Erica, and then let's get back to those slides. Anthony.
Great, thanks. I'm wondering on the AI digitization process, you mentioned like you've gone through a few iterations, like 4th or 5th generation. I'm curious, like in the latest generation, how much manual review is required, or like what are the issues that you typically find in the AI or whatever the digitization process is not properly capturing right now, and do you see like significant improvements generation to generation right now, or yeah, I'm just kind of curious because that obviously affects your scalability and how fast you can process this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So I would say, and Aziza can maybe talk to this a little bit more as well, but I would say that our latest system is really good at extracting the data exactly what we ask it to extract very accurately with minimal manual intervention. You do still check all the data, but it's very good at extracting the data. The main issue usually lies in certain EPDs reporting certain things different way that we haven't necessarily built in to the AI parser's understanding. And so that's when some of the issues can come in, and it does require a little bit deeper manual review of the EPDs and adjustments of our prompts for the parser.
Yeah,
Great,
and
thanks.
another issue is like how the PDF is like reporting GWP and GW fossil. That's where we have to intervene. And other thing is sometimes there's a new manufacturer and we're improving our code to input the new manufacturer, but sometimes you have to manually input the new manufacturer and their website because sometimes the website link is not in the PDF. And yeah, those are the main issues.
Great, thanks.
Erica.
Yeah, thank you. My question is on how EPDs are essentially categorized in your software. When I've run into difficulties, it's because, once we get past, ready mix concrete or steel reinforcement, something like that, to something more complicated like an insulated metal panel or something like that, it's difficult to isolate exactly where that lands in your guys's database. So sometimes I will inadvertently search in the wrong category and not, find what I'm looking for. So I don't know if there's any visibility or transparency on how some of those I guess EPDs are being scanned and categorized. And then I've also noticed that, if I just go in and search for all the 4,000 PSI concrete in North America or something, and I get, the really great chart saying here's the max and the min and, the middle values. Frequently the max value or something very high is something that's been inadvertently categorized incorrectly, like it's a precast member, in there. So I didn't know if there was any strategy or feedback on how you guys go about categorizing. Thank you.
Yeah, the categorization in some cases is a little tricky, just because sometimes we can identify by the product category rules that certain EPDs are referencing, but in some cases, there's not a one-to-one relationship between a PCR and the product category that you might think to be able to looking for it. And so there's always a little bit of a judgment in some of these categories or in some of these EPDs to put them in the right place. And again, currently, we are also having the AI kind of help that as well. We have 200 categories, and Aziza and I are not experts in every single category of products, right? So we do have some systems in place to help things get categorized, but I think we can probably get some more feedback on the issues, in searchability, and then try and come up with some other ideas of guiding people to the place where the EPD is. I know that it gets a little bit hard to be able to pick the right category out of 200. And I think there's a couple other line items on this list that we'll touch on a little bit later on the searchability kind of categorization as well. So, this won't be the final response that I'll give to that question.
Chantal has her hand raised, and then we should get back to the slides. Chantal?
Hi. So my question is about your system to, I guess, scan or input EPDs that have either multiple products within the same EPD, so different sets of results for multiple products, or for multiple facilities. So results would be shown separately for each facility or for each product in the same EPD. So is the system able to enter the information for these different products or facility when it is scanned or input by the program operator?
Yes, it is. So we do split any EPD that has multiple sets of results tables, or contains data for multiple products, or even versions of the same product. We do split those into individual EPD data points, and the AI system can do some of it. Usually, when the lists of those products are smaller, so let's say up to 10 or 15 different products. And those differences in the products or plants are very well defined on the EPDs. When there are extrapolation tables in some of these EPDs, we usually do a little bit of a manual processing and then splitting those EPDs into the platform. But we do create an individual record for every single plant or product variation.
When you say extrapolation, are you referring to when there's an equation to go from one product to another?
Even if there's an equation, or sometimes there's just tables of factors and how to convert from the single results table into other variations.
Great.
So both of those, yeah. I would say the one with the equation, that one definitely requires manual intervention right now. Again, that may change soon. I think the AI models are getting much better at understanding everything. So, but currently, if there's an equation, that definitely has to be handled manually.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move on to some of the other topics on this list. So data management, and really this touches more on structure of some of the data as well. One of the things that we've had high on our list, and some of the ideas that we've heard, I think specifically from some of the manufacturers or industry associations in certain categories, is actually protecting some of the data or not necessarily disclosing all of it all the time. So we've been talking to a few people about potentially having private EPDs. So these would be EPDs that are searchable within the database, but don't necessarily reveal the environmental impact data right away, unless it was specifically requested or uploaded by an individual user, then that user would get all of that information, or if it was used on a specific building project within our platform. So that's one idea of potential changes to how some of the EPD data is managed within the database. We've also talked to some program operators that have heard from their constituents that they didn't want to be seen as the high carbon product in the database, but even still having that data point in the database is useful because it gives people context and kind of understanding of the true variation of impacts within product categories. And so the other potential coin or side of the coin here could be that actually the embodied carbon and environmental impact data is considered within the database and within the statistics, but the specifics of the individual product and manufacturer may be redacted or not disclosed. So I wonder if anyone here on the call, probably on the manufacturer or industry association side, has any reactions to this, and also if you could maybe speak to a little bit of the motivation or intent for why this would be necessary, right? Like, are you concerned about incorrect comparisons? Are there competitive advantages, disadvantages that you're concerned with, et cetera? We're trying to understand, what are all the solutions to making sure that more people are on board with having data in the EC3 tool. As I mentioned before, it is primarily a tool used by architects, engineers, and contractors and owners to actually document their environmental impacts in their projects and make material decisions. And so that's how EC3 was initially created, right? So anyway, I'll open it up here for any initial reactions or thoughts on these.
And of course, you can respond anonymously through the forum too, if you want to speak up around this topic anonymously or privately. Joseph.
Yeah, good afternoon, or for folks, good morning if you're on the West Coast. I just want to speak to some of the feedback that I've heard through my past deep involvement in industry with respect to anonymous, or not anonymous really, private EPDs. So folks who are developing EPDs, willing to provide them to their customers, but don't want them publicly available. And if folks are like, why would you want it? Why would that matter? In public procurement for construction, when folks are often bidding on pretty tight margins and sometimes win or lose a bid by less than 0.1% of the total project cost. When you start talking about agencies having incentives or other sort of financial aspects to their procurement program related to EPDs, even sharing, some companies, some firms see that even having their competitors be able to see the GWP reported in their EPDs, they're concerned about that from a competition perspective. Sort of like, it's like, why wouldn't I just give my competitor my price per ton of whatever produced, or that sort of thing. So that's where I see the concern that I've heard from folks in industry. So I appreciate that you're looking at figuring out how to adopt this, a way to handle this. So that's all.
Got it.
Great.
Thanks for the feedback. One more hand, Melissa.
Yeah, hi. I'm just going to echo Joseph is spot on, being part of concrete manufacturing and concrete being sort of a mix you put together with a lot of constituents. It depends on local sourcing. It depends on where you get your sourcing. There's a lot of things that go into that. And although we definitely advocate for transparency, we can't give away everything in that mix. Otherwise, we are allowing competitors to see that. So that is definitely one of those things. As far as sharing with the client, once you get into a contractual agreement and you're talking to a client, just like with pricing, that's an open discussion, and those EPDs that we produce are readily available to them. But putting them on a public platform does open up to issues with fair competition.
Understood.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Chantal, and then we'll move on to the next line item.
So I don't know exactly how that's presented, but I would say that when there's too much information kind of hidden, you kind of wonder if this is credible information. So I understand that, there's some private issues, but there needs to be somewhere identification that, this information has been third-party reviewed before it's inputted in the database, I would say, so that we have, that it adds credibility to the values that are in there, because there's lots of information that's not available. You need to know that it's still good information that is being shared, right?
Yeah, we would provide some education around the why, and case study examples of the business case and the why around this if we moved in this direction.
All right, let's move on to the next one. So we have had some interest in, I would say mostly, some of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing categories for including also non-EPD data. And some of it could be certified. So I don't know if you've heard of the TM65 data points. Some of it is self-reported non-EPD data that kind of, takes the shape of an EPD or something similar. And it follows similar methodology, but is not verified, is not following specific product category rules. And there is some plans for having that data to be certified as well. But one of the questions here is really, are people welcoming this? Are there any qualms about having this type of data in the public instance, for example, next to EPDs? And any ideas for best differentiating between the two for our users? And there aren't any pressing questions or thoughts on this, please share. Otherwise, we might also just get going on the next batch of line items here. Matthew?
Yeah. Hey, first I just wanted to echo what everyone else has said. Just thanks for these sessions. It's been really interesting and useful, but I would definitely see a lot of value in having the ability to include or not include self-reported data in particular. I think if it is third-party validated in some way, but short of an EPD, perhaps that's different. But personally, if I were judging, for instance, different HVAC systems using TM65 data and EPD data, I would want the ability to toggle TM65 data on and off, and maybe even have either a disclaimer or a pop-up, or by default only include EPD data when it's being searched for in EC3, so that people have the ability to include that certified and self-reported non-EPD data. But the default, like my default assumption working in EC3 is that all of the data points I'm looking at are EPD data. So I think people would need to have that education and have some kind of a warning that not all of the data points they're looking at are from third-party verified EPDs.
Got it. Great. Still welcome more comments and questions on that point in the chat and in our Google form, but let's move on to the next batch of items. In terms of how we show data on the individual EPD pages, right now we standardize the way that the impact categories are listed on the EPD page when the data gets added into EC3. That is different than how the data may show in the PDF document. And so, sometimes it's not a big deal. What we are trying to do is align the data so that others using our data, including EC3 end users, but also including the integrators, don't have to go and understand the differences or similarities between some of these impact categories. And so that's why, we basically put it in a standard format. But I wonder, are people sometimes finding themselves wondering, how did we actually extract it? What does GWP actually mean? How did we get from Tracy excluding biogenic to GWP fossil, for example, or is that a direct linkage? And also, how do we show biogenic carbon data fields? Really, this is all about transparency and again, our extraction processes and how data actually shows up in the tool. And then the last point is that we are preparing for having to deal with RECs and PPAs and EPDs. So again, if there are ideas on the best way of showing those in the platform, we welcome those as well. I'll open up the floor again. Kevin?
Kevin, you should be able to unmute yourself. Sorry, you're having difficulties. There's a chat going on to Voslav, and then we have one question I published that you or Aziza may want to tackle. Not necessarily on this slide's topics, though.
Is there any
Okay, I think
question?
I'm off mute now.
Oh,
Sorry.
we heard you.
Okay,
Yeah, we heard you. Great.
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, my question is around, looking at the biogenic sources. We, from a, my company's perspective, we're actually using biogenic CO2 and sequestering it permanently in a manufactured aggregate. And I'm just wondering how the GWP will be kind of recognized in these cases where you're essentially creating a negative emission. Obviously you're typically tabulating, consumption or generation of CO2, and in this case it would be the opposite. So using a biogenic source to really use use aggregate as a storage device. Is there thought about how this would be reflected, and does GWP account for negative emissions well?
Yeah, so currently, usually the GWP biogenic would include the net of emissions and uptake rates of from biogenic sources. And then we do also have the biogenic stored EC field in EC3 right now. So that's, the actual stored biogenic carbon that potentially can be re-released again at the end of life, depending on the disposal scenario. In some cases, in some products. I think the one thing that we're currently not actually digitizing is the biogenic carbon removals and uptake tables, the way that they show up in some of the newer EPDs that are out there. So that's one of the things that we can still do. And then I think the other part of the question that you just posed is how do we then show the data in some of the diagrams and statistics? There is actually another set of sort of ideas of any sort of ideas or feedback on how we show the global warming potential values in the individual categories. Currently, we just show a single global warming potential value type, and usually it's the fossil one in most categories. There are some exceptions. But if we started to also show the stored carbon in the products, really, what are the ideas on clearly communicating that is one of the other questions that's still kind of on our mind. We know that we have to do it. We know that people want to understand biogenic carbon. But yeah, any additional feedback and ideas on how to do that best are definitely welcome.
Yeah, I'll reach out. It's definitely evolving, but as this this sector scales, it's going to be something that's will become more visible, and we will need to track.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or thoughts? If not, we can move on to the next. I think we only have 9 minutes left, so that's not a whole lot of time to get through the rest of the list. Let me just introduce some of the other topics here. So in terms of management, we do have some versioning capabilities in the tool. And we do also get asked about what are the connections between certain EPDs, like when there's a newer EPD published for the same product for which a previous EPD hasn't necessarily expired yet, how do we connect them in EC3? Currently, we don't have any explicit fields that we use for those connections, and so that's something that we have on our list to improve. We do adjust the expiration dates on the EPDs, which may sometimes result in a mismatch between what you might actually find on the PDF of an original EPD versus what the expiration date is in EC3, right? Because we control the visibility in the searches by using the expiration date in the digitized EPD. So one of the ideas that we also have is, again, for more transparency, we could probably be tracking both the original expiration date and the adjusted expiration date when we do make those adjustments and connections in between EPDs. This would also help with some post-import deduplication processes. And we do know that we need to improve what we do for deduplication. And then I also know when we deduplicate, we do sometimes merge EPDs, which actually can remove the original ID that maybe our integrators have used or others have used for documentation purposes. And so one of the things that we have planned is a redirect system for even when we merge and deduplicate certain data within the tool, there's always a redirect to the newer or more authoritative EPD. We're also, one of the questions earlier was how do we develop these categories and search filters? And currently it's relatively cumbersome process, and we do try and work with industry representative and experts that know about these categories to develop these things. And so one of the things that we would like to figure out is a more streamlined process for adding categories and refining them and really bringing in the right people to the table. It is stuff that we've done in the past. Again, we just want to make sure that we develop a consistent process that we can quickly scale up and reuse over and over again. I'll switch to the right side of this page. And I do want to get to the analytics part of this list again for just open discussion before we wrap it up today. But with the development and refinement of additional categories and search filters, as I mentioned, we do want to make sure that we help guide users through which fields, search fields are, should maybe be required, which ones are more important to have, and which ones are just frankly less reliable in the EC3 tool, just because maybe the current EPD data doesn't necessarily provide all the product information that we would need to actually be able to use those filters. So we will need some expert input, expert and end user input on identifying what those critical fields are. If you are representing specific, categories of products in EC3, reach out to us and maybe just list the top fields that you think are important for our users to specify or select during the search process. We also know that geographic filter can be an issue today because we use the production location in the geographical search. We have some ideas about how we could improve that to actually make it be based on the region of applicability of those EPDs. And there are some additional clarifications that we have in mind, for the searchability. Now, let me pause here a little bit on the prioritization of reported GWP. So as you heard, that is something that we are currently considering and planning. That is just feedback that we've gotten from all the sides consistently. The tricky part in this is how do we highlight some of the data quality aspects, and what are they? What are the data quality aspects that we should be highlighting? And how do they show up in a table for the end users without really overwhelming them again, right? You have to kind of take into consideration that not all of our users are savvy LCA, practitioners with years of experience. And so we're still juggling here kind of the usability versus transparency, in all of these interfaces. So any feedback on this front? And if not, please provide feedback on what you think the data quality aspects are that we should be highlighting once we move away from any sort of uncertainty adjustments. Just to reiterate again, initially the uncertainty was really meant to provide the end user with a simple way of showing that one EPD is not necessarily always equal to another, right? And it was really focused on specificity. So again, if there are other things that we should be considering in the communication with end users, let us know. I already showed this diagram. So again, we do have these things on the list, right? We have heard that the statistics are great right now, but there are a couple additional things that we could add, like how many manufacturers, how many different production plants are represented in these lists. I also wonder if people are or know how to adjust some of the reference lines or CLF baselines in the tool. If not, again, let us know, because that tells us a lot about needing to change the user interface. And then if you have any samples of how you show biogenic carbon to your clients or users that we could implement in EC3, again, this is for the public benefit of communicating all this information, let us know as well. Again, trying to wrap up here because I know we're coming up on time. The overall data curation aspects of the EC3 data, we again have some processes internally that we have some ideas on how we could improve. For example, better tracking and overview of the different errors in the digitization process, or when there is a product category where, like earlier was mentioned, there may be an outlier EPD that is just miscategorized. If there were certain ways that we could catch those earlier, then they have to be reported to us by the end user. That would be great. And so we do have some of those ideas on our list as well. The other idea that came from one of our industry partners recently was that, well, I could help you, quality assure a certain category that I know about if I could only, kind of subscribe to what has been changed in that category since I last checked it. And so one of the ideas is that, we could have a subscription to, or we could have people subscribe to the search filters and then get automated emails when there are additional EPDs. So I wonder if some of these ideas would be useful to a broader set of users as well. With that, I think we are at the top of the hour, so I do want to open it up, I think, for maybe a couple of last overarching questions or ideas. And otherwise, this will be recorded and posted on our website. Again, you hopefully have the link to the Google form. It's on our website as well. And all of this feedback is just going to help us prioritize and add anything that we have missed. So thank you again for the feedback and for participating in this session.
Thanks so much, everyone. Great job, Václav, as usual. And I'll close it out.